Hello, my name is Taylor Darcy with Darcy Law. I'm a California licensed attorney that works with startups, small businesses, entrepreneurs to help them build a strong legal foundation. Today we're going to talk about how do corporations work. In previous episodes, I've talked about when you should use a corporation. But today we're going to talk about kind of the nuts and bolts of how to get one started, as well as how do they work. So actually, we're just going to talk about how do they work. So there are three main components to a corporation. And these are the big picture things. So please keep that in mind. First is a shareholder. Those are the owners of the company. If you think, or stockholder, those are the other term. Shareholder, stock owner, it just depends on your jurisdiction and also, kind of what's in vogue at the time. But they essentially mean the same thing. A share is an ownership in a company. That's pretty simple. Is it gives you a right to a profit of the company, and the shareholders then elect directors. You've maybe heard of a board of director, and the board of directors then are in charge with hiring the people that will run the company, and you've heard of those people as chief executive officers, chief financial officers, COO, chief operations officer, chief information officer, chief legal officer. All of these names, those are all the executives that are in charge of that company and that handle the day-to-day running. The board are removed from the day-to-day operations. They handle the big picture decisions. They handle how to decide who does those things in order to make the best decisions. So they're in charge of hiring and firing the chief executives, but they're not in charge, or not chief executive, the chief person, right? The executives. They're not in charge though of the day-to-day operations of the company at the lower levels. So the employees, people that are at the bottom of the thing, or mid, vice presidents, all of that stuff. So the directors have no say really over those types of decisions, like how something gets transactions processed, that type of thing. The shareholder is the way that it works with that is that it's very limited as far as liability is concerned. So if you spend $100 in a stock and the company were to go either bankrupt or get sued, the maximum amount of money that you're going to lose is the $100. That's it. That's all you can lose. Now, in certain instances, as I've talked about in other videos, they can pierce the corporate veil, but it's happen, but it's not common. And so shareholders have that limited liability, which is the whole purpose of a corporation. A corporation and other business entities that create limited liability are there to encourage investment. Imagine if it wasn't, a lot of people get on companies for, they shouldn't have that limited liability. I've heard that argument before. The problem is, if I invested in a company and I knew that if I invested $100 and now all of a sudden, if the company gets sued or goes bankrupt and there's creditors involved, that my house and my other assets are on the line, well, I probably would think twice about like investing, right? That's the important part. And so that money that's used for capital to help build businesses and help the economy grow and whatnot is given because of the limited liability. If you don't limit people's liability, you're going to have what's called a chilling effect on the market, and it's going to cause people to not invest, which means that companies that need capital aren't going to have access to it, which means that businesses aren't going to be able to grow and provide jobs for other people. Now, I'm not going to get into the moralities of that. I'm just simply saying that from an economic perspective, limited liability is key to having a good economy. Otherwise, or one of the keys to having a good economy. Otherwise, you wouldn't have those assets. Or imagine someone that that invests $10,000, but they're worth $1 million, right? And now all of a sudden their $1 million is potentially up for grabs. That's a much better example than $100, right? And all of a sudden that $1 million is up for grabs just because they invested 10,000. So the board of directors, there's what are called annual meetings that the board of directors have to hold. And they have to keep up with what are called corporate formalities. And what that means is that they have to have those annual board of directors. They have to have annual shareholder meetings. They also have to have, they have to keep minutes. They have to keep records of the decisions that they make. Okay, that all goes into having a corporation. Without that, then they run the risk of what's called piercing the corporate veil, which I've talked about a couple of times. But part of keeping up those corporate formalities are to keep it distinct and separate from an individual. As I talked about in other videos about piercing the corporate veil, the key to having a corporation is you want to have it distinct and separate. So that means separate bank accounts, separate everything. Everything has to be titled in the corporation. There has to be an EIN number, so on and so forth. So that's how a corporation works at a very high level. The internal workings of the corporation, they don't happen. They happen by normal business, normal things that happen. But the shareholders are the owners of the company, okay? And they're the ones that then appoint the board of directors. Now, some, due to certain legislation, there have to be so many that are interested, i.e. people that are paid by the corporation. And then there's also disinterested members. And we won't get into the logistics of that, but just know that there are certain requirements due to legislations like Sarbanes-Oxley, which we're not going to talk about today, but it's important to know that there are requirements for directors. And then the directors oversee to make sure that the chief executive officer and the chief financial officer and all of those are making good decisions. Okay, they have to do what's best for the company under what's called the shareholder primacy rule, which is a simple version of they have to do what's in the best interest of the shareholder. And what's in the best interest of the shareholder is to make a profit. Okay. So that's a very brief overview of a corporation. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to subscribe. I'd love to help you out. Give me a call when you get a chance, or if you have any questions, I'm here to help you. I want to help you succeed straight up. That's what I'm here for. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.